There we are.
Hello, folks. Good afternoon. This is the Jefferson Educational Society with another great talk. Today, we are speaking with our guest, Brian Zonaas and Joe Cuneo, and moderator is with me, Andrew Roth. Welcome. I'd like to do a brief sound check. Please, everyone, say something light and hearty. First, Andy, would you say something, please?
1, 2, 3. All's good.
All is good. Brian?
Thank you for having us.
And Joe?
Hi, Angela.
Hello. All right, so let's start. Hello and welcome to the Jefferson Educational Society and its digital programming. I'm Angela Beaumont, and I'm the Director of Operations at the Jefferson, and I'm also directing the Jefferson Civic Leadership Academy, a 7-month-long program during which participants examine the inner workings of local governments to emerge as civic leaders who are capable of effecting a positive change for Erie County's future. In addition, participants develop their leadership skills by engaging in research to address critical issues facing our community. The Leadership Academy is now in its 7th year with a growing alumni network. Part of the program is that the participants do a group research project dealing with such big, timely issues as the pandemic, environment, poverty, blight, opioids, and access to presque isle. Why am I speaking about the Leadership Academy first? Because it is very much connected to the Raimy Fellowship Program, and our 2 guest speakers have completed the Raimy Fellowship Program. In this conversation today, we'll explore the research topic, Caring for Those Who Care for Us, completed by today's guest speakers and Raimy Fellows, Joe Cuneo and Brian Zonaas, who are also alumni of the Civic Leadership Academy. It's great to see you again. Looking forward to this. With us also, we have Jefferson Scholar in Residence, Dr. Andrew Roth, who's facilitating the Raimy Fellowship Program and will guide the conversation with me. Andy, would you like to speak a little more about the Raimy Fellowship Program?
Thank you, Angela. And good afternoon to everyone who's listening to us today, and to those of you who might be listening to the recorded version of this in the future, welcome. Yes, today we have with us 2 of our Raimy Fellow Scholars, Brian Zonaas and Joe Cuneo. And as Angela said, the Raimy Fellows Program is part of the Civic Leadership Academy. Several years ago, members of the Leadership Academy asked if there wasn't the opportunity to do 2 things in addition to the 7-month program when they go about Erie County, meeting Erie County leaders and learning about the political dynamism and economics of Erie County. In addition to that, there was a request maybe to do a little bit on, for lack of a better phrase, leadership theory and what it means to be a leader. And also an opportunity to do an individual or perhaps a small team, as we have today, 2 individuals, research project on some facet of the larger group's research project. And out of that, through the generosity of a benefactor, was born the Raimy Fellows Program. The Raimy Fellows Program consists of, it varies from year to year, but something around 3 to 4, sometimes 5 sessions on leadership theory, where the fellows read classic texts on leadership or watch films and discuss current events within the context of leadership theory. But also and I think the real substantive part of the Raimy Fellows Program is they engage in some research into a specific issue impacting Erie County. Over the years, we've had several people complete the Raimy Fellows. Seth Trott, who is now a law student at Dickinson Law School in Carlisle, he and Michael Outlaw did an excellent project several years ago on creating a minority business incubator in Erie, which there is now some possibility of indirectly an offshoot of that particular piece of research actually happening in Erie. Jim Wirtz, who some of you know as the chair of the Erie County Democratic Party, was a Raimy fellow a year or two ago, and he did a very in-depth study of voting patterns by precincts and area codes. And April Soriano, who I believe April has moved on, but at the time she was a Raimy fellow, she had a really interesting idea that is now some people are trying to bring to life. She worked at those days at GCAC, but as I said, I think April has changed positions. But she looked at rural poverty and tried to think of a way in which you could match the skills and talents of retirees to the needs of people in the outer county, and came up with the idea of creating a skills bank of people who were willing in a philanthropic spirit to help individuals. Yamura Shakur Hooker did an interesting project on food deserts, and she came to several conclusions, one of which has led to there's a neighborhood garden network in the city of Erie. I'm not sure the other idea that she was working on with food trucks. She had a very clever idea that I think she picked up in Toronto, Ontario, of an idea based on a spin-off of the concept of food trucks, in which you would have mobile farmers markets that would go from neighbor to neighborhood with fresh produce, which would also enable you to, there's not many farmers markets in Erie in January. And so it enables you to get past that seasonal challenge. And just recently, last fall, Matt Weirdle did a program on navigating and transcending the digital divide. In fact, Matt was our first FaceTime live stream presentation. And today we have Joe Cuneo, who was a member of the Leadership Academy in 2019. Joe currently serves as a marketing and communications consultant for Erie Insurance. Prior to that, he worked in marketing and communications at Mercyhurst University and Stairways. Joe has also worked part-time at the Erie Times News. He's a graduate of Gannon University, where he graduated with a degree in journalism and communications. He's wrapping up a master's in organizational leadership at Mercyhurst. And I think I did mention he was a member of the 2019 Leadership Academy. Brian Zonaas is an assistant at Larch, a role he's held since 2009. And if I mispronounced that, I was going to ask you, Brian, to make sure I say that correctly. Formerly, he was program manager and life skills coach at the Barber National Institute. Brian graduated from Edinburgh with a BA in sociology in 2017. He has past volunteer experience at Presque Isle State Park and at the Tom Ridge Environmental Center, and worked as a volunteer in the Obama presidential campaign, and has also served as a Special Olympics coach. Brian and Joe are 2021 Raimy Fellows. There's actually, there will be another presentation on May 4th by Jeff Staborski on the digital divide, but today we're with Brian and Joe, who are looking at a problem that the pandemic really, it's a problem that predates the pandemic that we've all been dealing with these past 14, 15 months, but the pandemic seems to have delivered or put a particularly bright spotlight on an issue that had more or less percolated under the radar screen, and that is how society values and rewards and compensates this new category of individuals we've all learned to know about, called essential workers. And this, and Brian and Joe are looking at one slice of that problem in particular. And before we get into their presentation, Brian and Joe, I'd like maybe to ask you how you got interested in it and what, specifically is this problem?
So we began the process by looking at.
For our audience's sake, that is, I should have made the point, but I'll always get stage right and stage left mixed up. The gentleman speaking right now is Brian.
So we wanted to look at something that was going to impact the community. You talked about all the programs and all the research was relevant, and that's important, that it's able to be put in play. So that's where we started, and we both have a great passion for helping, whether it's volunteering or vocational, work. And we started to examine what people were doing during the pandemic as their occupation. Were people staying home? Who was reporting to work? And then what it looked like for an essential worker in the various fields. So I think media did a really good job of talking about the grocery store worker or the gas station attendant or these people that were still part of your everyday routine, even though before they maybe weren't as present in your everyday life. So we examined essential care for people providing care to people with disability. And from there, it was several avenues that we needed to research in order to identify what was an issue that we could address, which was, there are several we'll go through. But it was the turnover rate that left many of the agencies providing care in a hiring crisis. So we'll get into that a little bit further, but that was the issue, that qualified people are not around. They are normal or routine ways that agencies would hire, such as job fairs, not just posting, that wasn't as successful during the pandemic. So there was a hiring crisis prior to the pandemic. It has been really highlighted as a major problem since the pandemic has began.
Yeah, I would just
And I
add
know
that
in the presentation, you deal with, you're going to focus on that. I'm just going to ask Joe, but Joe, I apologize, I talked over you there for a moment. I was going to ask Joe how he got interested in this topic and how the two of you teamed up to examine it.
right. Well, I was just going to add that Ryan has firsthand experience with this issue, working for a care provider in Erie, and so I was somewhat new about there was an issue, but I had no idea how widespread and prevalent it was across all care providers, not just in Pennsylvania, but across the country. We found a lot of information that really highlighted this and really, spoke to the level that they are not compensated with in terms of, monetarily, of course, but also, they're in the pandemic, they were asked to do things that, they that weren't in the job description, things that, to keep the individuals, safe, to do things, like I don't know how would you say, like they would try to entertain them. They did a lot of different things, and it really became clear that this is something that needed to be dealt with in a real lasting and meaningful way. So the more I dug into it, the more I found it just became more and more pressing in my mind.
If I'm hearing you correctly, an overtaxed and overstressed category of support professionals were asked to do even more that was outside the job description. I'm
Absolutely.
sure you guys have a lot to say about that in the set presentation. For our audience, Joe and Brian have a presentation we're going to go to in a moment, but I'm going to hand it back to Angela for a minute because I know she has a couple of housekeeping comments about how we're going to handle this on Facebook today, and also then setting up Joe and Brian to share with you their presentation. Angela? You're
on
muted.
mute.
Now, since this program is first airing live on the Jefferson Facebook page, we'll work our way through as many questions from you as possible as we can as we host this event. If you have any questions, just leave it below in the comment section as usual. And if you're watching at a later broadcast, please do feel free to send us your questions as well. And for more information about upcoming Jefferson events and publications, visit our website, www.jeserie.org. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. The program will also be available on our website in a couple of hours. So yeah, thank you for joining us in this discussion. I would like to now pull up your presentation, and you will guide us through the presentation, and then we'll open up the floor for questions and answers.
Um,
All right.
So as we begin, it was important. The first place we started was what was a direct support professional? And then that's the term that we'll use to identify at large, they're referred to as assistants. Some agencies refer to them as staff members. So direct support professional is used throughout advocacy agencies throughout the state. And that's their term, direct support professional. So we started to look at what is direct support. This is a care that's provided by a lot of people to a lot of people. And as we examined, it was individualized, which was this person-centered platform that care for people with disability was found to have an effective approach. So focusing on the person, their abilities, the challenges that help them achieve, supporting them in all aspects of their life, including medically and fun aspects of life, enjoying ourselves, vacations and celebrations. It was complete care.
If I could ask a question, gentlemen. Look, one of the ways that, and for our audience, we've talked about different ways that we might proceed today. And I think one of the ways, maybe Angela and I would just every now and then jump in during the presentation and ask a question. The slide you have up, you say it's care. And of course, the theme is caring for those who care for us. And those who care for us, of course, are the direct support professionals Brian's talking about. But he mentions, Joe and Brian mention a fragile population. Without obviously impinging on anyone's privacy, could you describe or what you mean by a fragile population?
So medically is one way that they are very fragile. Actually, some of our research that we'll talk about discusses the risk factors of getting COVID, even that they're much higher in people with disability. So that was a new added example of what care was, but this was
Yeah, I would just say that this population, it's more at risk. They're more prone to comorbidities that affect them, that occur and might make COVID more deadly. I think one of the facts that we have is that people with disabilities who contract COVID are 3 times more likely to die from it. So, it was a fragile population to begin with their healthcare needs, their socialization needs, and some of their other needs. But COVID really compounded that.
That's really helpful because, so if I'm hearing you correctly, we're talking about a population characterized by individuals with developmental disabilities,
Correct.
intellectual
some cognition issues, but also physical disabilities. And those physical disabilities, as Joe just said, I guess in the new jargon that we've all learned in this last 14 months, there's a much higher incidence of comorbidity, makes them much more vulnerable to COVID in particular, and just really heightens the importance of providing high-level care for those people, which those individuals, which of course, providing that care is the whole thrust of your presentation. I'm going to be quiet now for a minute and let you go ahead.
So, well, no, that's perfect. That the care is individualized. So everybody has a diagnosis that receives care, and then that further will help create specialized care. And there are a lot of different disabilities that are supported throughout Erie County even. So it does matter, this person-centered platform was essential when we were examining care, because it is really based on the person, what their needs are, and what success and achieving that success looks like for them. And then how the assistants, the support professionals create a plan, put the plan into action, and then continue to support them. That is just one of the many parts of the direct support professional. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think we can go to the next slide.
Next slide.
Yes, please. So the first thing we wanted to address was the financial compensation that is not determined by a lot of other businesses where your productivity would maybe increase your wages. That is not how direct support professionals are funded. So it was challenging when we started to look at how do you get more money into the pockets of the people who are providing this care. During the pandemic, there was a hazard pay that L'Arche received for 12 weeks, $3 an hour was the wage increase for 40 hours a week. And we were only one of two agencies supporting people with disability in Erie County that got it. The other one was Erie Homes for Children and Adults. So of all the agencies providing the care, that's a very low margin to get it. And
so if I'm hearing you guys correctly, and just in your first two slides, you really illustrate the main point that the care that these people provide is critical for a very fragile population. Right. And yet the financial compensation, maybe not the psychic satisfaction the support people get, but the financial compensation, and this is no criticism of the two local not-for-profits. This is a national problem. All not-for-profits working in human services are confronted with how to raise money for this. And I know Joe and Brian are going to come back to it, but in many ways that leads to a lot of the problems you're going to get described in a couple of minutes. Is this I'll say it for you to get you both off the hook. This disconnect between the importance of what these people do and how they're compensated.
Right.
Sorry, Joe, I talked over you.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say that the Pennsylvania, the rate at which the Pennsylvania DSPs or the providers are reinforced, it is actually relatively good, because nationally the average pay for a DSP hourly is something like $10.72 per hour. Now Pennsylvania is around $13 per hour, something like that, and now that hasn't changed for 7 years either. There hasn't been a rate increase for that either. So it's just kind of this situation is stagnant. It's been this way for a while, and it's just something that needs to be addressed. And so that's just kind of the angle that we're coming at it from. You want to go to the next slide then? You want to talk about this?
Yes, so this is where, once somebody is brought on board, the home that they'll go to will welcome them in a way that is to set up, any in-home training that needs to take place. This could be to help support their disability, to maybe bring them on board in a way that will be productive, but also impactful with the other people in the home. So a lot of the homes are 4-person homes that have housemates that all live there, and the support professionals then come into the home and provide the care. And so we're going to really kind of dive into what that means to provide the care. But as people spend time in the home with the people they're supporting, you develop relationships. And because the direct support professional is required to wear so many hats at any one given time. So helping to advocate and support maybe a medical need, or to help people stay, aware of their diets and give them helpful reminders to, be mindful of their body. These are all.
As I'm listening to you, too, and I'm looking at the slide, I'm wondering if Angela might have a question, but it seems to me, thinking about the first 2 slides, you say qualified long-term assistance. Well, we need someone who's qualified. So what are the job requirements? Well, the job requirements are knowledge and experience. And I'm going to ask you to maybe elaborate just a little bit on what that knowledge and experience is. But then it says the ability to engage with all aspects of care. So we're really asking a person to do an incredibly wide array of services for someone. But not rewarding them for having the experience and ability to do that, which the audience doesn't know, but I know what your next slide is, and that has a powerful negative impact, which then brings us back to, so I'm going to kick it back to you guys. Angela?
Yeah, well, I was going to say we can go to the next slide if you like. So yeah, the issue that that direct support professionals and providers are facing is that low wages, along with grueling hours. These are jobs that have to be worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and often involve doing a night shift after a day, just all kinds of demanding responsibilities. There's higher incidences of stress and depression among groups of DSPs. It's physically more demanding, and in addition to that, they're being asked to do more and more because there is this drop off in employment, because people are choosing other occupations that pay just as well or better, that are not quite as challenging. So what we're seeing is tremendous turnover. About 45% of all direct support professionals don't stay on for more than 12 months. Funny thing is that in Pennsylvania, it's a little bit better. They said 55,000. There's 55,000 total DSPs. 17,000 won't last. So that's only about a third. So they're doing relatively well considering. But the other thing to consider is that the pandemic has made it even more challenging and required DSPs to provide even more services that they either weren't prepared for or weren't on their job descriptions. And this has really made for even more challenging job conditions, and kind of even spells out more why it's incumbent to to do something about this. Do you have anything else to add?
If you guys have it on I can't remember if you have it on a slide in the coming up, but is there a specific training or educational background that DSPs are required to have?
So both L'Arche and the Barber National Institute have listed, and we use just their Indeed listing, what the requirements are for employment. Both of them have listed 1 year experience, but during the crisis, I'm not sure if that's something that is necessary, that is needed to implement. I think on-site training is essential to provide care. A lot of direct support professionals receive in-home training for a lot of the things they'll be doing throughout their entire employment supporting. So
I just wanted to add that a lot of these jobs remain unfilled as well. So that's why there's this need for this tremendous increase in job responsibilities. Why, DSPs who currently work have to take on so much, because there is this, glut of unfilled positions, and something's got to give.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So if I could sum up just a little bit, because I know in your next couple of slides, you're going to talk about the value that these people provide, and how appreciative clients and their families are of the work that's done.
Right.
We have people who we've not yet established a formal training requirement for, and I'm not quite sure exactly how you would train it, to be candid, to be completely honest, who we expect a great deal from, who we then don't compensate correctly, because we're working in a not-for-profit environment where, it seems to me it's just ripe for a public-private partnership of some sort here to help these agencies stabilize their workforce by helping them to be able to afford to compensate these people correctly, so that you would reduce turnover and you wouldn't have these empty space. Is that a fair summary of what the problem you see? It seems to me like this thing is
it's all angles. Yeah.
This may be a classic example. I'm hesitant to use the cliche vicious circle, but it seems to be that we have drop the word bit. We have a difficult and challenging circle of events here, where we have a critical service under rewarded, leading to large employment gaps, only making the service that much more critical, leading to I'm going to kick it back to you guys on the impact that DSPs have on their clients.
Yeah.
So as we did our research, we also did some interviews. We spoke with the directors of L'Arche and the Barber National Institute, and we know through these interviews and conversations, and through some of the things that we reference in our paper, that they are 100% aware of this issue. It is not something that directors or administration, it's not in their power to fix. They do not have the budget space to just do what we are speaking about in terms of the financial compensation. It's also very important to know that coming into this professional field, you know that there are some times where it can be more stressful, but this is the relationship that comes over time, the knowledge that we gain of the people we're supporting, but that they gain of us as we provide the support, and you really share mutual friendships. So the roles that
I think
go ahead.
I think I want to, just reiterate what you just said and make sure that we make it clear to our audience that we're not in any way criticizing local agencies. We're here to argue, and actually on their behalf, that there's a tremendous opportunity here. When I mentioned public-private earlier, for both on the private side, a philanthropic commitment to support these agencies, and perhaps on the public side, to find ways to help them with funding that would enable them to manage their staffs more effectively and to somehow stop this merry-go-round turnover that results because of the compensation issue. It's just it's baked into the issue, so to speak. And it's bigger than any one or two agencies, as Joe said at the outset. It's actually national in scope.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the issue is not, as Joseph said earlier, it is a national issue also, but we have seen progress. President Biden's proposal has direct support professionals as one of the categories of people he has targeted for financial compensation. So it has definitely been an issue, and it continues to remain an issue, but is not something that is unachievable in terms of getting proper compensation.
We'll come back to that at the end of your presentation, I'm sure. But why don't you? I'm gonna be quiet for a couple of minutes and let you guys talk about the value and the impact that these people, that direct support professionals have, and the quality of care they provide.
Sure. Can you go on the next slide, please, Angela? Okay. Do you want to talk about the?
So, like what I've said several times, the person is the focus, and it's what their needs are, their requirements for proper support. So that's where the specialized training comes into play. It also is not just a one-time training. We continue to be required to have yearly 24 hours a year of in-service, and any care that is new or updated, we continue to be trained on. So it's not something that is ever obsolete. We are making sure that the care we're providing is the best available. This also has an interesting component because the direct support professionals oftentimes play the role of advocate. So in terms of going to a doctor's appointment, they are there to support the person, maybe physically to get them to the appointment. But once you're there, depending on what your reason for the visit is, it may be extensive. There may be a lot of things that need to happen for somebody to receive care. This is where direct support professionals need to make sure that they have the best relationships they can with the doctors and nurses that are part of this umbrella of care, and that at no point in time is it thought, okay, we have care, it's set, we're good. That it's always improving, and the evolution of care, I think, is front and center on the agency's operations. So they all so at Large Erie, where I'm at, they focus on how to train in the home because of the low expectation of professional training coming into the job. So that can also provide its own stressors, where when you're being hired and trained, that can be a very overwhelming time for a direct support professional. And you need to be able to manage all of the components of not only your experience, but then your development of relationship with the people you'll be supporting.
I think you do a nice job highlighting that in your next two slides. Maybe we want to move to the next slide.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the impact of direct support. Now, as we said, you kind of share your life with the people that you care for. Experience bonding and trust with those that you care for, and it's also a way for the individuals with disabilities to become integrated into the community, and really find a job, go to school, any kind of programs that they attend, and really kind of find purpose. Dsps provide a strong, they provide a standard of care that reflects strong consideration of personal care, that of the people that they're with. And then, of course, turnover does play a factor in this. The sad thing is that people who play large parts in the lives of those individuals, when something happens in their life that requires them to move on, that also has implications for the individual. And it's a sad thing to think about, but that often means that they are no longer in their lives, because of the circumstances that they're faced with. So, if you think about that, I mean, that's tough. I mean, an individual with disabilities can come to rely on, form a great relationship with somebody, and then one day, they're not there anymore. And I'm sure, in many circumstances, it's very difficult for them to understand. I think that's one of the issues that turnover has implications on that people don't even consider, and that's really a shame. You probably have experience with that as well. I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, so when that team dynamic comes into play, where you're supporting several people, you're one team, it can be challenging at moments. It can be very, when I say challenging, things need to take place. Organization is key. Documentation is essential. Communication is key. But in addition to all of these components, if you think about your own life and how you communicate at work, a lot of the similar components are there. But there's no way to talk in a report about people's lived experience, their life, what is happening, in their day-to-day. So it's important to be able to have the professional translation where this is how it can be supported when we're not talking about their life and their first person point of view. But
I think
this
on
care,
your,
as we see, is universal.
I think on your next slide, you really make that point quite well.
Right.
It's person-centered.
Yeah, I think, I think in general, it's important to tell the stories of those who are directly impacted by this. I think that's, as we were doing this project, that's kind of what we discovered, was that the greatest evidence for making some kind of change to the wage, or any kind of changes to compensate DSPs, was really to tell the stories of the individuals who they impact. And do we want to go into the next slide? Okay, we talked about this a little bit. The pre-pandemic care, Brian could probably touch a little bit on that, but I just wanted to point out that the individuals with disabilities were disproportionately affected by the pandemic, in terms of mortality, as well as in terms of some of the risk mitigation efforts. social distancing, I think, had a more adverse effect on this community. I think that things that tools that were used, such as Zoom or video conferencing, that most people came to know as second nature, wasn't really as effective with people with disabilities. And it's just and there was just a greater impact on them. I don't know if you want to talk about any of the experiences that you encountered.
Yeah, so that's very important about how communication changed in the face of the pandemic. That doctor's appointments maybe would be through televisits, and for some of our individuals, they may not have the ability to communicate verbally on a phone, or they may have other impediments that don't allow for this Zoom platform to be the best way to receive care. That meant
I know you
going
guys.
out into the... Sorry, what was that?
No, go on. I'm sorry.
So that meant going out in the community, needed to be very, very carefully done, because individuals with disability maybe were able to understand components of masking, social distancing, all that was required of someone to stay safe when they were out in public. But oftentimes we, as direct support professionals, found that the connect between what was needed to happen and why did not exist. They would wear a mask if they were able to tolerate it, but it might start coming down, or all of the things that we've seen throughout the pandemic of how we properly mask and stay safe. So that's where challenging things for a lot of people, for example, the mask, that's been an issue for many, but this had its own extra component of maybe confusion, or just an unwillingness to wear it because they have no experience with that in their life. They've never been required to wear a mask. So that changed their everyday interaction. But it meant that these little components, and I say little, they are major to stay safe, but they were just one check on a massive checklist that needed to be done every day to keep people safe and mentally strong, physically strong. These, Joe mentioned earlier, the DSPs were required to do things that maybe traditionally they hadn't done in the past. So with the stay at home order, direct support professionals who may have been second and third shift before were now first, second, and third shift, and there were no day programs and no social outlets, no activities available. So your people you were in the home with became your new bubble, and that
Just
meant
adding to the stress of the job.
correct.
Just magnified the stress of the job. I'm looking at the time as we close in on the top of the hour.
I'm sorry. Let's we should probably move on.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Let me maybe sum this up, then I'm going to ask you what your proposal is. You guys have done an excellent job of pointing out the value of DSPs, the incredible range of services they provide in a very challenging environment under the best of circumstances. The pandemic has just exacerbated the whole thing, as you just said, Brian. Suddenly, with stay-at-home orders, the DSP, the service provider, now found themselves in a separate bubble because you can't move back and forth in and out of it. So if I can maybe sum it up for you, and you correct me if I've oversimplified it, the problem is that it's a high stress occupation serving a very fragile population serving a population that is, I think I don't want to get too melodramatic here, but I think somewhere you might have found it in scripture to bring that into the moment. How a society treats its most vulnerable is a measure of that society's virtue and ethical character. And I think maybe we take that a step further, how it treats the people who treat and support the society's most vulnerable is a measure of that society's ethical character. And that may be taking the high road. And then there's just a much more instrumental street level issue, this incredible, because of the lack of rewarded compensation, the high turnover rate in that profession it just exaggerates and amplifies all of the issues.
Bingo.
So you guys have done a nice job outlining that and making that case. What's our solution to this? Because as you said, it's
right.
not our agencies. We're here advocating for them. It's not our agencies, and it's not unique to Erie, Pennsylvania. What can we do to advocate at a public policy level, so to speak, to begin to address this?
So I think we're done with the slideshow now, but essentially what we're proposing is that there's a $3 minimum wage or $3 wage increase hourly for direct support professionals in Pennsylvania. There is precedence for this. During the pandemic, New Jersey instituted a $3 wage increase for direct support professionals for 3 months, and I believe the governor then made a motion to extend that as well in his in the next year's budget as well. But essentially, it would bring the wage of DSPs more in line with, or closer in line with, the job that they do, the responsibilities they undertake, and we believe that there's in addition to there being a need for this, I think that there is a real opportunity here. Pennsylvania, in the COVID-19 rescue plan that was just passed, is getting $7.3 billion, and that money has been earmarked not to be used for offset tax decreases, or for pension plans. So it can only be used for a few things, one of which is increasing the wage for workers. So we propose that part of that is used in the next budget that is passed by the governor and the state assembly, and for the 50,000 plus DSPs in Pennsylvania.
So
the second component of our proposal was it really tied into the $3 wage increase. The system is designed to have a full staff of DSPs providing care. When you don't have a full team, those stressors that we've talked about, not the normal ones that come with the occupation, but the extra that happen because you're understaffed, there's no solution for that other than getting qualified, reliable, and engaged people to share the life of a DSP. So it is essential that compensation was the first thing to happen, because the stress that continues to build because of the crisis does not have an end in sight without, more employees coming to join the agency.
So if I could summarize that, part of what you would now be advocating for us to solve this problem would be a $3 an hour wage increase for people in providing direct service providers. And we would fund that in part by the governor of Pennsylvania in the next budget using some of the stimulus money that is coming to the state of Pennsylvania would be to earmark it for that. I also know, and you mentioned it way at the beginning, Joe, Brian, I think mentioned it way at the beginning, that in the proposed infrastructure plan of President Biden, there is a component, kind of new definition of infrastructure, but it would be a soft tissue, if you will, infrastructure would be to support people in these roles. So if I'm hearing you guys correctly, you're advocating that because of the extreme importance on a human level of the service provided by these people, that they be given this very modest $3 an hour raise, which, by the way, in many instances would only bring them up to the proposed minimum wage of $15 an hour, or maybe just put them barely above that. And that actually this is not pie in the sky, because there already is funding coming to Pennsylvania from the federal government that could be earmarked, or some of which could be earmarked for this. There's the potential for more funds coming from the federal government that could be, some of which could be earmarked for this. Of course, Biden's infrastructure plan has not yet been approved. And also, I mentioned earlier, for those in our audience listening to this, this isn't really just simply an appeal to go use public dollars. There's also, I think this is a powerful case for private philanthropy to support these local agencies and their staff and employees who provide this incredible service. I know Angela had a question or two she wanted to ask as we wrap this up. And I want to thank you guys for your for the research and the seriousness with which you took all of this. Angela?
Yeah, I do have a question here. Like 10 years ago, I worked in schools as a special ed assistant, and then actually went to college to take a few credits. I didn't finish my degree, but I saw that because in early childhood or you know, K through 12 education, there's a different outlook on professions in special education. And but then in one of the classes I learned, like, oh, now they're adults, what do we do now? And it kind of like drops off. Right. And what is your opinion on maybe extending like a sweeping legislation like No Child Left Behind into No Adult Left Behind? Is that something you would like to discuss with a legislator? And your Raimy Fellows, chances are you can when we go to Washington, D.C., right?
Right.
Yeah. Do you want to answer?
Yeah, I think that you're right. It's really important. One of the things that I found was that you know, if this crisis in the position continues, that you know, there's implications that can possibly be felt you know, by everybody. You know, if DSPs continue to if the jobs continue to be open, there's a possibility that states move more towards you know, segregated institutional models, and which would be a real tragedy, because we've in the past we've moved away from those and integrated folks into society, integrated them into communities. They've gotten jobs, gotten a sense of purpose in the community, and so if there continues to be an issue where there's not funding available for the DSPs or the individuals, you know, yeah, I think that could have real, very negative, tragic ramifications. So I think that any kind of legislation that supports these folks, I'm all for.
And so I guess I just wanted to address it, that it's not drop off in care. There's an educational service plan when you're in school, and then when you transition out of school, you have an individual service plan. So this is really how the county, the agencies, and your team, who are, or the team of DSPs, support the person. This has everything, you know, it's a very thorough document that goes through their life. And that document is a living, breathing document as the person who it represents. Oftentimes, I've seen the ISPs and the ESPs not reflect who the person is in that moment, or they're just not up to date in terms of maybe their capabilities, or because I said it's their full umbrella of care. It has everything, even, you know, if you have plans to travel and what your interests are. And it's very, very thorough. And if the direct support professionals don't have long-term experience and relationship with the people they're supporting, these documents that really drive the ship, I'll say, maybe aren't as thorough, or as they're not as informative as they could be if turnover was not a major issue.
Yeah, those
support
points of
Yeah.
transition. Yeah, they're very critical. I remember that.
So the education, I think it's easier for the schools, but it's not easy, I think. My brother is actually a special ed teacher, and it is very, very involved. The difference would be the time that, you know, you go to school, as opposed to your home and your life outside of, you know, school or your work. That's everything, you know, that's the whole time frame, and that doesn't have the same structure as school, where you have an itinerary and a curriculum, and so I think they look different. It's that care, though, that is reflected in the people sharing the information and the people then implementing that information. So
Right.
I think that really is why we've mentioned so many times about what turnover does to the people that are supporting the individuals, and then, you know, with the increase in stress and the major crisis,
Well,
you
you know,
know, the agencies feel.
turnover
but-
and major crisis are, you know, those are
But it can-
important, maybe.
It can run the risk of affecting lives, so.
Mhm.
But, well, you don't run the risk of affecting lives. You are affecting lives. Positively, you run the risk of affecting them negatively. I'm watching the clock. I think you've done a wonderful job of identifying the problem. The problem, as it almost always is, follow the money, is that because of inadequate funding, both publicly and philanthropically, agencies are unable to compensate their incredibly important staff, at least at a minimum level, to keep them and with some stability to minimize turnover, which ends up undermining the ability of the staff and the organization to deliver the quality of service I think an ethical and virtuous society would want to provide our most vulnerable. I think I have one last question. I think Angela does. My question would be, based on everything you've just told us, if you had 5 minutes, if you happened to, through some fluke, be in an elevator with Erie state legislative delegation, all 4 or 5 of them, I don't know, I forget the actual number off the moment. I'm not going to put any one of them on the spot by mentioning a name. But if you happen to be trapped in an elevator with the Erie legislative delegation, and you had, please don't take 5 minutes, we're running out of time here, but if you had 2 minutes, the classic elevator speech, what would you tell them they need to do about this problem and why it's critical?
Well, you stole my line earlier when you said that
Sorry.
that's a society. No. This is great minds think alike, because the society is judged based on how it treats it. You know, its most fragile population, or whatever that is. I think Hubert Humphrey said applied it to government as well. He said that, a government is judged by how it treats its most vulnerable population. So it's really incumbent upon us, because this does have real ramifications on people's lives. That would be the underlying message that I would want to send. Some might think of this as, oh, it's a raise for certain people's jobs. No, it's a way to increase, life, the wellness of life for a very at-risk population. So that would be my pitch.
And I would say that Erie County has been leading the way for people with disability since the 50s, when the Barber National Institute came, and in the 70s when Marsh came. It's time to lead the way once again and get compensation to the direct support professionals in a way that can affect their lives and can cause real change to solve the crisis that is currently, plaguing those agencies. So, not quite.
Angela?
Thank you. I think we covered it all. The presentation was very extensive, a very insightful presentation. So thank you. I can only imagine how many lives, are being touched in a positive way every day, and the support individuals and their families receive from direct support professionals. And your presentation and research was a rare glimpse into what professionals like you, Brian, encounter in terms of inadequate benefits, training or limited training, lack of career advancement opportunities. So thank you for highlighting all that. And thank you both of you for documenting the extensive research work and conducting the interviews, and must have felt like group action project XXL, right?
Right.
So yeah, thank you so much. Do you have any further questions? Do you have any?
No, I think I've put them on the spot enough. I just want to thank them for their work, the quality of their work, and to throw my 110% support behind what they're advocating for.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so we've come to the end of this fabulous program. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time, energy, and effort to share with us in a conversation here. And to all of you watching along at home, thank you for tuning in. A friendly reminder to stream other Jefferson digital programs on demand. Head over to our website, jserie.org. Where you can find details about upcoming programs, as well as a wide range of publications, from quick time reads to reports to essays, and more, free to download. And be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube channel. For the Jefferson Educational Society, I'm Angela Bowen. Be safe, be sound, and thanks for listening and learning with us.